Xhaka's corner, Giroud! Goal given! Wow! A game of margins, a game of thrills!
It is Monday, the 23rd of September 2019. Much like the Chelsea versus Liverpool match, this episode is going to be a game of two halves. This is Pressing Matters brought to you by On The Mic. In the first half, I'm going to talk to Wajeeh Haider, who's been very kind enough to join me over here today. We're going to talk about Real Madrid, their recent loss to PSG, and how Zidane's rebuilding job is looking so far in the season. And in the second part of the episode, I'm going to be joined by Jawad Nasser, and we're going to look at Chelsea versus Liverpool, which happened on Sunday, and we're going to talk a bit about how Lampard's progression at Chelsea has gone and what a Chelsea fan hopes to see or has been encouraged by in the last few weeks under Lampard's management. So, Wajeeh, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're going to start off straight away. I know you won't like this, but PSG 3, Real Madrid 0, absolute humiliation. Di Maria getting back at Real Madrid, or we have to talk about why he was so pumped up. And that was because, if you remember, Argentina got to the World Cup final in 2014 and Di Maria was fit to play. And the physio cleared him, but he was coming back from an injury, and Real Madrid basically forbade him to play, and they didn't allow him because they wanted to sell him and they didn't want to risk an injury. So he missed the biggest match of his life because of Real Madrid, and now he wanted to get back at them, and he did.
Well, thank you, Ismail, and I think you're right about that. Regarding the World Cup, there are rumors that Florentino Perez himself wrote a letter to Di Maria that he shouldn't be playing the game, and that was followed by him joining Manchester United in a record signing. So you're right about that, and Di Maria's return to Real Madrid, I think, well, on paper at least, it seemed that without Mbappe, Neymar and Cavani, we would still be able to give them a run for their money because Hazard was debuting in the Champions League for Real Madrid. But, well, to my surprise, at least I was surprised, the devastation or the scoreline was not up to what we expected. But going back, I think so. What I think that Di Maria or his performance, that is very situational. If you have to go back and look at the factors which actually resulted into this, because lots of factors contributed to this. First, when we talk about Zidane, the point is that when Zidane first arrived at this club, he was not here to beat his own standard. He was here to clean up the mess which was created by Rafa Benitez. And that mess, to Zidane's ability, was pretty much a doable job. Because Zidane, since day one, had a very player-centric approach. He relied on players' individual brilliance.
I must add that this was probably influenced most by Carlo Ancelotti, who is one of the best man managers in the world.
Exactly, and Zidane had the chance to work with him for a very long time and eventually landing the La Decima. So Zidane just completed his licenses, got back into the game. He relied more on the players. He had Cristiano Ronaldo in his prime. He had Luka Modric, who was nearing his prime. So that player approach resulted into two things. One, if you see in his first season, Real Madrid won 17 points in the last 20 minutes of the game. And that's huge. And they scored more than 20-25 goals in that duration. Now, eventually, what was named the cross FC approach. And we have solid figures to support that approach. I mean, Ronaldo had been scoring great. He was a good poacher in the box. Benzema linking him up. 4-4-2. Fullbacks in prime form. Marcelo, Carvajal. They were actually the reason why we went on to do the three-peat. Because if you look at Manchester City, if in context they had fullbacks such as Marcelo and Carvajal, and the only reason why Manchester City could not progress in the later stages of the Champions League, that's because they were lacking the fullbacks like Real Madrid did.
You could say that a team's only as good as its fullbacks.
Exactly. And I think in that position, if you pick a player like Marcelo, For a fullback, his abilities or his skills are very underrated, because you've seen the Bayern game, you've seen the game versus Barcelona, the El Clasico in 2016, how he used to dribble past almost everyone and
Break the lines and
that
then
final
create the
ball
space.
into the
Yeah.
box. He has done that he's done that for I can't even recall now. But as we moved on into the later stages of the season, or let's say in the second or the third season, this approach seemed to give very diminishing results. Ronaldo himself, he scored like 25% less goals through this cross FC approach.
Because it became predictable.
Exactly, because everyone knew what they're going to do. Modric is going to exhaust those half spaces. He's going to link up with Bale and Carvajal. On the other hand, if you see Isco, Cruz and Marcelo, Isco being a very natural number 10 in the Real Madrid side, he spent more time towards the left side of the box and he concentrated on it for a very long time. Now that says something, and that says that yes, we have been crossing the ball a lot, and those clusters of passes, they are very repetitive. It's a Real Madrid playbook. You open it up and you see those left and right concentration of the passes, and you'll know that Zidane's in charge. But now when he's come back, the point is he's been looking for quick fixes, and that quick fix again is no surprise the cross approach, because he seems to think that we need to fix something. I have now possessed this club in a mess far greater than what Rafa Benitez left behind. And to add that, Zidane now has the pressure to surpass or improve on what he himself left the club for. He left because he knew that he cannot provide 3 consecutive Champions League.
Exactly. I say Ronaldo and Zidane were the smartest ones in football at the moment because of when they left. Because that was when the core of that team was about to absolutely diminish. And that is exactly what we saw next season when Cruz lost his leg, Modric lost his legs, Ramos and Varane weren't the same, or Marcelo wasn't the same player, and they've not been the same player since. And Ronaldo and Zidane left at the exact right time. But then Zidane came back because Florentino Perez wanted him to clear the mess again. But exactly like you said, his player-centric approach is something that cannot be applied to this current mess. He needs to change, and it's a new challenge that will probably test him in ways that will allow us to see whether he is even more of a great manager than we thought. And in the match against PSG, before we move on to a more general talk about Zidane, I just felt that the same problems reappeared for Real Madrid that we saw in Zidane's last tenure. And that was that there was literally no midfield. There were huge gaps between the lines, and PSG just played between them. Like Di Maria went into those pockets. Casemiro was definitely more than like 10 times in a 2v1 or a 3v1 situation in the match. And that meant that the back line, which was already devoid of Sergio Ramos and an underformed Courtois, were absolutely raided and bombarded with shots. And then they had to go in. And I just wonder how Zidane, without Ronaldo, without that fresh core of players, can progress and even go to the semi-final of the Champions League if he leaves these kind of gaps. Because if you have Mbappe, Neymar, Cavani, if you have Sadio Mane, if you have Mo Salah, if you have these kinds of players coming at you with so many gaps, they're going to destroy you. And it was a kind of blessing for Zidane that Choupo-Moting and Sarabia and these kind of players were playing, who are not the most lethal players in world football. Because if PSG were at their lethal best, Real would have had a humiliation. Like they would have lost at least 6-0, I believe. So what do you think why isn't Zidane fixing the same old problems that they had in the back? There is no coordination. There is no compactness of the defense.
Exactly, Ismail. Regarding the PSG game, it's very shocking. And like I said, to my surprise, I wasn't really expecting that kind of scoreline without Sarabia, even Icardi. So that was quite shocking. And the other point, which is quite shocking at this point, is Casemiro had 90 touches on the ball in that game, which is 10 more than Toni Kroos. Now, for a DM whose primary job is to become a shield in front of the first, whose job is to be the shield in front of the four defenders.
He's not a Busquets. He's not a Jorginho. His main task is not a playmaker.
Those 90 touches, those are unbelievable. I mean, you don't see in modern DM doing that kind of stuff. But however, Casemiro's role has changed into the team. That's because of one major reason, and that's Luka Modric. We relied on him for a far long time. We relied on his ability to chase those half spaces like I mentioned. But the point is, now when he's exhausted, now when he cannot play 90 minutes day in, day out, now when he cannot defend your right flank and nor he can go up, run against the defense or provide a ball or two, that unnaturally made a role for Casemiro. Now when Casemiro, who is not as brilliant on the ball as Luka Modric was, and all respect to Casemiro, we don't even expect him to be. The point over here is that Zidane was trying to chase Paul Pogba for a very long time, and that was pretty obvious. The Frenchman has always talked good about Paul Pogba. There have been problems in the Manchester United ranks. Pogba wasn't happy over there, and the point why Zidane sold Ceballos, why he sold Llorente, these two brilliant footballers in Spanish ranks, they were sold or loaned because...
And especially to a rival. So in one move, you're diminishing your own squad and you're strengthening a rival.
Exactly. And at the cost of expecting that Florentino might sign Pogba. Well, that never happened. Bale didn't go. James was there. He was given another chance. But that didn't fill the hole for what was actually lacking in the team. And while on paper, there are pretty good options on the attack, pretty good options in the defense, the midfield part with a struggling or a tired Toni Kroos and with an possessive Casemiro who wants to see the ball far more often than he used to.
And with a team that's fighting on all four fronts.
All four fronts. And we need to bear in mind that this time the expectations are far greater. Because like I said, Zidane over here is trying to accomplish what he has already accomplished before in the last 3 seasons or more. But I think he needs to now know that whatever the transfer window has gone through or whatever player has left or arrived, this is going to be a very roller coaster ride for him, I guess, because Marcelino is gone despite providing Valencia all the success which they were hoping for. That was a shocker. And that shock wouldn't come so surprising over here at Real Madrid because La Liga and these clubs, Real Madrid or Barcelona, Valverde's job is at the stake as well. Fans are not happy. They don't even want to tune into the games right now. Even when Messi comes on and plays for 20 minutes or so, he's not making the same impact like he did before. So yes, Zidane's not safe. Secondly, if I personally try to cut him some slack, that would be some of the uncontrollable factors. One is the obvious that Cristiano Ronaldo has left and that gap can never be filled in the first 3 years or so, because I still think that we need to do at least 3 to 4 transfer windows in order to completely replace Cristiano Ronaldo. Thirdly, the injury crisis. I mean, things would have been different if Hazard arrived in time. He was fit. He was playing games in and out. So this kind of game against PSG, he could have performed far better. Again, Modric was out. We could have saved him for these big games in order to utilize him against the powerhouse like PSG, who are going to deploy players like Di Maria, Verratti and Gueye. So those are some of the uncontrollable factors which I believe are not under Zidane's control or anything. But you're right, his job is at stake right now. And quick fixes, they don't seem to be natural. I mean, players might have to step up. His approach won't change. His crossing approach won't change because it's a quick fix. I mean...
But does he have it in... So it won't change can be down to 2 reasons. It won't change because he believes in it and he thinks that it will provide the solutions necessary to Real Madrid's worries.
He came out in the presser and said that we lack the intensity. Now...
Or is he unable to do anything or coach any kind of passing patterns other than crossing and, getting on the end of, basically being a man manager and allowing players to express themselves in the final third? Which one do you think it is?
I think so. It's more to do with his inability to find a solution to get these players together and provide them with a platform where they can excel without crossing the ball as much as they are doing already. That's what I think is the main reason behind this.
And what do you think? Who's at fault for the lack of planning, the lack of the lack of foresight about Real Madrid's midfield troubles? Like, so as we said on one of the matches, I think last week, your Real Madrid's match against Levante at the Santiago Bernabeu, Real Madrid's squad list, which has everyone in the reserves and the bench, Real Madrid had 3 goalkeepers and 3 midfielders. So that's the first time I've seen something like this, that you had the same amount of midfielders as you had goalkeepers. And that's because, and that's being generous, because I wouldn't really rank James as a midfielder per se, because he's more of a number 10. And in a 4-3-3 especially, you don't really have space for a 10, especially if the other 2 players aren't box to box or can't really do his job of covering the pitch. Cruz really can't. And then that leaves only Casemiro, which means one player cannot do the job of 3 players.
Exactly. You're right. I mean,
who's at fault then? Perez or Zidane?
I think like I said, some are obviously the uncontrollable factors. But Zidane excelled over here in 3 seasons. He knew that he couldn't deliver the same expectations or the fans' expectation in terms of silverware or the success. I think you as a manager or as a fan, you need to consider this, or consider Zidane's first resignation holistically. Because if Zidane actually had the insight or actually had a plan to move on from this squad or move on from this philosophy of football to somewhat more appealing to eye, or somewhat more appealing to fans, or somewhat more appealing in order to break down the opposition, he would have stayed. That was, I mean, who doesn't like to stay in Real Madrid? He was the most loved manager we ever had. I mean, he has delivered what no one else could have ever done.
Not only at Real Madrid, but in football.
In football. His resignation, that means that there was something going on in his mind that I think
this is as far as I can take.
This is as far as I can take the team. This is as far as my tactics can make me go on. I mean, we've had examples of managers failing in their tactical approach. The most recent one being Mourinho.
Absolutely.
What he's done to football, I mean, for a very long time, he's still being cherished as a manager who completely changed the football. But he hit his breaking point. Similarly, Zidane has done so. But there are 1 or 2 hopes as a Madridista which I can still foresee, and those may not completely rely on the tactical approach being followed by Zidane, but somewhat on the players which can be brought into the system, who, by the way, already exist into this team, into the squad. And starting with that would be Karim Benzema. Now, why, you might ask? That's because when we look at Karim Benzema, last season, it was his, I think, one of his third season where he scored more than 20 goals in the league. And his 7th out of 10th season where he scored more than 30 goals in the entire season. Now, his role when Cristiano Ronaldo was in the team, it was more confined to a playmaker kind of role. Who was
Absolutely. Creating space for Ronaldo.
Who was trying to link it up.
Yeah.
He was trying to create that space for Ronaldo. Although Ronaldo himself was pretty brilliant in the box, but Karim Benzema,
best I've seen.
But Karim Benzema, we have to give him credits that how he managed to give Ronaldo that space, how he managed to pass that ball every time he saw Cristiano Ronaldo in the box.
And that he was selfless as a person.
Exactly.
Who was at one time when he was at Lyon was touted to be the best forward of his generation. He was said to be the next Thierry Henry or something of the sort.
Exactly.
And then to go on and to mold yourself and to sacrifice yourself, because he knows as well as anyone that people mostly look at goal scoring numbers.
Exactly.
People
for a number 9 and at Real Madrid.
Undervalue Roberto Firmino, undervalue Karim Benzema, undervalue to an extent Olivier Giroud because of the roles that they play.
Exactly.
But these players know, and their managers know, that if Karim Benzema is not there, if Roberto Firmino is not there, the team doesn't work. Your players don't score as many goals as they do with them in the team, and that's the fact.
Exactly. And in his recent interview, Karim Benzema was pretty modest about his approach. He was like, there was the magnificent Ronaldo, and then there was the speedster or the unpredictable Gareth Bale, and then there was Karim Benzema, who was making it all happen.
That's pretty modest.
And that's pretty modest because if you go back and if you look at the prime BBC, Karim Benzema, I hated him for all the chances he wasted over the time. But his approach towards passing the ball, his approach towards dropping deep, if you look at his heat map in the past 3 or 4 seasons, he's been literally everywhere in that central. He's dropped deep. He's in the center. He's had far more touches than you expect an average number 9 to have. Compared him with Diego Costa, although they have very different roles, but still, it's brilliant for a number 9 to go on and play like this. And now he has realized that, of course, my club failed to sign a goal scorer to replace Cristiano Ronaldo.
So now I have to do something.
And now he has matured to a point where a player of his caliber does understand that, yes, I need to step up. I need to now go from linking things up to actually putting the ball behind the net. And that is what exactly he's been doing. He's on fire this season. You've seen his performances. He's not only creating those goals, he's in the box. His awareness is pretty high and he's scoring them. So Karim Benzema, Zidane loves him already. Even though we have signed Jovic, we are yet to see him play for the entire 90 minutes, which I do expect him to play in the future games because the league is 38 games. We're going to play in Champions League as well, 8 games to say the least, or 6, and even in the Copa del Rey. So yes, while Jovic might come in to give that offensive approach because he's the most natural goal scorer we have right now, but Karim Benzema contribution to the team, they are going to be what I can call a plus point for Zidane because he's in mood this season and he knows what to do. And with the arrival of Eden Hazard, which is going to be my next point, I see these two linking up and actually giving Zidane some hope to lift some type of silverware at least.
That's an interesting point, especially now that Hazard's back and he's going to integrate himself in the team and probably it's a definite case, but we'll see how long it takes for him to gel with Benzema and Bale. But if I'm a Real Madrid fan, I'm more concerned about what happens at the back because even when you had Cristiano Ronaldo, arguably the greatest goal scorer ever, if you're talking about pure lethal players in the box, he's the top man. Then you're talking about Karim Benzema, Prime Modric, Kroos, Casemiro, that whole team that won the 3rd Champions League. In the league, that team wasn't so great. So if you look at their stats, they had 76 points, and they conceded 44 goals in the league. 44. So even with that lethal front line, with everyone performing to their absolute best, especially in the second half of the season, with Ronaldo, with everything that he put away in the box, you still only had 76 points because you were leaking like crazy at the back. This season, you don't have Ronaldo. No matter how good the connection between Hazard, Benzema, Bale becomes, you will probably only score around as many goals as you did that season. Or maybe even less.
Right.
But you will still, as it looks like right now, concede the same amount or maybe even more. Who knows? Because the midfield issue is not being resolved. You already have conceded 9 goals in 6 matches. That is where I worry for Real Madrid. And that is one of the important things that we should talk about before we wrap up. Do you think Zidane has shown anything so far that shows that he will make the defense more compact, make it less reliant on individual brilliance of Ramos and Varane, and more about defending as a team as maybe Diego Simeone's team does?
Well, Ismail, when we began this podcast, we were actually talking about how Zidane has always relied on the individual brilliance. And that was particularly the time when Sergio Ramos came out as a new hero in defense, and we were actually paying more attention to Sergio Ramos or defense in general. You being a Liverpool fan, you'd relate to this because Virgil van Dijk, he's set to win the Ballon d'Or, I guess. So, when we talk about defending as a block, that worked once in Real Madrid, and that was in Zidane's first season. It was the El Clasico in 2016, which we drew 2-2. And if you look the highlights of that game, Cristiano Ronaldo was back defending Jordi Alba's run into the box, and that happened for real in front of the entire Real Madrid fans. Now, defending as a block, that has existed before, and that has existed under Zidane as well. Now, the point which over here is that this comes from a mentality, this comes from a culture, this comes from the managers or the club's overemphasis towards going out there, defending on the line, giving out your all, just like Godin used to do, just like Felipe Luis used to do. And particularly Simeone is overemphasizing on the defense approach. Now, it's in the Real Madrid psychology. I mean, I'd be far more excited to see Cristiano Ronaldo back in the day, or even now Eden Hazard getting a hat-trick, or Gareth Bale scoring a wonder goal or two. But you're right about the fact that if I'm leaking enough goals at the back, that does not fulfill the entire purpose. But regarding the point of how Zidane has tried to influence that approach or tried to bring in that approach into his game, is the reliance or is the signing of Ferland Mendy. He has been trusted to perform in the big games. He has already replaced Marcelo in a game or two, and he will continue to do so. And that's a good sign, because Marcelo, he loves to attack, and like I said, it's for his role, his dribbling skills are very underrated. But Ferland Mendy, how he compensates for his attacking skills is he lies far more deep at the back, and he tries to defend that left flank as well. Now, that's a good sign, because we have seen examples in the past how Marcelo was exposed. When he used to go up, he used to try and link those crosses, one or two overlaps with Cristiano Ronaldo, or even in the past season as well. Now, Ferland Mendy, he's a positive sign. He's been very solid last night up against Jesus Navas and what's the name of Sevilla right wing? I've just forgotten his name, but he was pretty impressive. On the other hand, Carvajal, he is not the same player who gave that bicycle assist to Cristiano Ronaldo, and Ronaldo scored that great goal against Juventus. But on the other hand, we now have Odriozola. And the point is that Odriozola, when he played up against Levante, he completed 4 dribbles, he completed 44 passes, which is pretty great for a fullback. And with the arrival of these two, Mendy and Odriozola, I see them appearing far greater times than they did before, and they do provide a real competition to both Marcelo and Carvajal, who deemed to be irreplaceable or inseparable from Zidane's 4-4-2 or Zidane's cross FC approach. But yeah, these two players, they have lots of time, they have the opportunity, and Zidane is going to trust them, because I don't see Carvajal and Marcelo outliving there, because Carvajal and Marcelo both have had the history of enduring injuries in the times of great games. So yeah, Odriozola and Mendy, when they come in, and they've been impressive in the first few games which we've seen them, far greater than Theo Rodriguez and Reguilon.
Definitely.
And they do have a part to play in this team, and they will step up. On the other hand, Ramos, through his notorious approach of always getting yellow and red cards, we now have Eder Militao, who is an upgrade on Nacho Fernandez. Now, Nacho was a brilliant centre back, but he was not a very natural centre back. He's always been a right back kind of thing who promoted from
He's always
Castilla.
been confused, basically.
Exactly. And the worst part is that his height does not really support him in order to come back and chase those corners or come up against someone who's 6'4" or 5. So yeah, Eder Militao, and he's a great signing from Porto as well. And that's, I think, where Zidane and Perez combined one in the transfer window, because that kind of centre back who can provide a replacement when Ramos or Varane both
someone good and someone not just for the jersey, for the Galactico signing.
Exactly. And someone who's not there to sell the t-shirts, basically. Yeah. So yeah, these three players, they're good in defense. We need to see how they play out. But like I said, the player who is being used to defend these 4 people at the back is Casemiro, who's having 90 touches in a game against PSG. Now that's worrisome.
And where is Casemiro going to get his rest? How many games can he play on the stretch? And if someone comes in like Valverde, your defense is already stretched.
Exactly.
And Casemiro is already overburdened. How is Valverde going to cope with such huge responsibility? So I'm going to put you on the spot right now. I'm going to ask you, where do you see yourself? Obviously, you can consider how Hazard's going to integrate himself, and maybe things are going to improve with the cross FC approach. But where do you see yourself as a realistic expectation in the season, considering Barca's woes currently? But there's always a caveat there because Messi is not fully fit right now, and Atletico's summer rebuild. Where do you see yourself? Is Real any better than third place in La Liga this season?
Well, to be honest, Ismail, I can take this question up in two different ways. One is the self-critical fan who at this point just wants to finish the season because he's not sure if they're going to go any far up in the Champions League because a 3-0 blow against PSG, and that too by not registering a single shot in the game, which hasn't happened
shot on target,
in 578 games. Now, I mean, those moments are at one point not very natural because 578 games, and considering, like I just said, that fans are excited to see their players. Fans are excited to see Raul. Fans are excited to see Ronaldo go up against opposition, score goals, score hat-tricks. But now what it has come down to is not registering a single shot on target for the first time ever in 578 games. But the midfield disaster is for real. The midfield disaster of relying on Casemiro on that right flank and expecting him to provide a platform for Gareth Bale and Danny Carvajal or Odriozola to go on and provide those crosses and cut back and go up in the box. That is not going to happen. I mean, period, that's not going to happen. On the other hand, you have James, Cruz, Mendy or Marcelo or Hazard going up and defending that or attacking that left-hand side. But yes, that midfield it's food for thought. I mean, you don't have an actual solution to this at this point. And while we can talk about the defense or the attack or the improvements in it, the vacuum which has been created in the midfield, it's for real. And at this point, I think even I'm not the best person to answer it because even Zidane does not know that how he's going to fix this problem. Because, like you said, we had three midfielders, and one of them is James, a fit player who was nominated up against PSG. Now, at this point, there's no right or wrong answer to this.
There's definitely no right or wrong answer. I just want to see where you see this team finishing.
What I'm expecting is that it will go down to the wire because Real Madrid in Zidane's first season were the underdogs. We have always been unpredictable. I wouldn't mind seeing someone like, let's say, Valverde coming up there, or let's say we call back Ceballos in January, or let's say we could sign someone else and give him that role in the midfield, which realistically speaking is not going to happen. But then again, I'm giving the benefit of doubt on the unpredictability part. But yes, I think we are still going to win the league.
Big call.
That's because Atletico and
23rd September, Wajeeh Haider has put himself on the line.
Yes, we're going to win the league. I am not very hopeful about the Champions League because when you see the team, when you see the likes of Liverpool, Juventus, Manchester City, they're out for blood. And they're out for blood at the and who's driving that factor? It's Cristiano Ronaldo at one side, Mo Salah at the other, Aguero or Kevin De Bruyne on the other side. So yeah, Champions League out of equation. Zidane, however, has to deliver, and I think that his player-centric approach might play a part in the league once again. He can always do that. You expect him to do those black magic, which has always been termed as a meme thingy. But yeah, we can win the league. We look good on the paper, and it's all about when this team comes on to gel together. When this team, because in the game last night against Sevilla, we beat them at their home, which is unpredictable again.
Yeah, they are very good at home.
At beating them at Sancho's Payuan, I mean, no one has done that. Even we haven't done that in, I guess, I don't even recall the years. But yeah, we have done that. And we couldn't do that when we had BBC. Now, this unpredictability and the average distance which was among Varane and Benzema throughout the entire game, it was only 20 meters. So, one little sign of that compact defensive shape was also there. Now, add some unpredictability to it, add some uncertainty to it, add some player-centric individual heroics to it, and I think we can win the league.
बोल्ड मूव मैं ही तुम्हारी वीडियोस लगाऊंगा मेरे पैरोडी
ये क्लिप वायरल होगा
but great. I like a fan who puts himself on the line and bets big on his team. I think their players and their unpredictability will mean that they have more of a shot in the Champions League and a knockout competition than in a competition where you expect to be at your game for 38 games. But then again, unpredictability means you never know what's going to happen. Thank you so much, Wajeeh Haider, for being with us.
Thank you,
it's
Ismail.
been great having you. And I'm going to be back with the second part of this episode with Jawad Nasir, where we'll talk about Chelsea versus Liverpool. Stay tuned.